This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the Microsoft Surface Go 2. It's the best of tablets and the worst of tablets. I bet you Charles Dickens never thought that his words would be commandeered to describe a futuristic electronic device like a tablet. You've probably seen reviews that say some of each of these things, and some of each of these things probably are true. We're going to look at it now. So Surface Go 2 obviously is the newer version of the Surface Go line. The original Surface Go gets an update. And why is it getting an update? The base model, there's not a whole lot of difference. We move up to a slightly faster Pentium Gold dual-core CPU, just 100 megahertz faster, but what they're doing here is also adding an Intel 8th generation Core M3 option for those of you who really like the tiny form factor and having Windows on the go, but you need a little more oomph because that Pentium Go has never been the sharpest knife in the drawer. So there's that. Also, they've managed to make the display a little bit bigger without making the tablet bigger. How'd they do this? Like other manufacturers, the bezels got smaller. There's still some bezel, and as a lot of people will tell you, tablets kind of need some bezel so you have some place to hold them without accidentally activating the screen. So cool that. Pricing on the base model, pretty much the same, $399.99, call it $400. So for something in some ways that is so high quality and high spec, that seems like a bargain. What's the high quality, high spec stuff? Well, the build. It's got that same magnesium casing that you see, makes it a baby Surface Pro. Very nice looking, nice kickstand design, good hinge mechanism on the kickstand, keeps it firm so you can even write on it when you have it recline. Aces there. You have a very nice display. It might not be as high-end as what Microsoft has put in some of their most expensive products, which is fair because this is inexpensive, but you get full sRGB coverage. You get a nice bright display with good contrast and 3:2 aspect ratio, which I know many of you are fans of, so you get more height than you normally would versus the usual widescreen display. And the resolution is pretty good at 1920 by 1280. So good stuff, again, for $400. You get a USB-C port. At this price, we don't expect Thunderbolt 3, plus we know Microsoft just will not do Thunderbolt 3, which is another point of discussion here, and a headphone jack and a micro SD card slot, and optional LTE, which a lot of people on-the-go products like this really like to have. So that's the premium stuff. The not-so-premium stuff for your $400 tablet is the Pentium Go. It is pretty slow. Now, if you're just using this for really light work, it's fine for something like Microsoft Office, actually, no surprise there. Even Google Docs, which is largely based on the web. Social media, streaming, video, all that sort of stuff, it's fine for that. Don't expect a lot of multitasking, though, because we have only 4 gigs of RAM in that base model. And a 64 gig eMMC storage, which is sort of like having a slow embedded micro SD card in for your storage. So you combine that with the only 4 gigs of RAM. If you start doing too much multitasking, it's going to page out to disk to create virtual memory, and it's going to be using a very slow eMMC for that. So if you don't want to deal with those problems, but you're okay with the Pentium CPU because your needs are not high, there is the 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gig SSD model. Not a really fast SSD, but at least it's an SSD, which is way, way faster than eMMC. The bad news is that's going to be $550. It's getting kind of expensive. And you still got that Pentium, so maybe you're not feeling like, woohoo, with what I bought here. Hence the Core M3 models. So supposedly manufacturers say a lot of people just usually buy the base model of whatever their laptop / tablet or ever is. So how many are going to buy this? I don't know. But that's for those of you out there who see the value basically in what Surface Go, and even to a certain extent products like Surface Pro have, which is you need Windows with you for whatever you're doing. A tablet OS isn't going to cut it because you need certain Windows programs. You know who you are, sysadmins, anybody who relies on that stuff. So there's the Core M3 for you. It's an Intel 8th Gen Core M3, and it's an M3, not a Core i5, obviously, duh. But that's looking up, and you get your 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gig SSD as well. And there's a 256 gig business model available. So then you're looking at $630. If you want it with LTE, it's LTE Advanced 4G. That is another $100, so you're looking at $730. The price is getting kind of close to Surface Pro 7 or Surface Pro 6, which you can still find, and boy, those are a good deal. I've seen Core i5 Surface Pro 6s with 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD for around $750, but there's no LTE there. So who's the Surface Go for then? Well, it's for those of you who need Windows on the go, and you see the value in that proposition. This is not an iPad sort of product. So if you're looking for something like an iPad, you just want to use it as a straight tablet. You want to consume media. Maybe you want to do some drawing with an Apple Pencil, that sort of thing, which even the base iPad can now do. You get the idea. Zoom, video conferencing and all that sort of thing. You just want it easy. You might not even want a keyboard or something. Probably the iPad is for you. If you want to game, because iPads are great at gaming. Yes, you're not going to be playing Battlefield 1, but then again, the Surface Go 2 can't handle that either. So you get the idea. So this is for people who need Windows and want Windows. But if you need and want Windows, pretty much you're going to be tied to the keyboard, where with iPads, for a lot of people, that's a totally optional accessory. Don't even need it. They're just consuming content on their tablets or doing some art or note-taking with the pencil, maybe. Well, you know the drill. The keyboard is another $100 for the base black model, and if you want those pretty Alcantara ones in colors, then that's $130. And then the Microsoft Pen is another $100. So that takes your base model $400 one, brings it up to, well, if you want it with the base keyboard, well, $500. If you want that plus the pencil, $600. If you want Alcantara, you're talking $630. And this is still just on the base model one. So you get the idea. And the Surface Pro has that problem too. None of those things are included. So the initial price can be a little misleading for the Windows crowd, who probably assuredly want that keyboard. Pencil, maybe yes, maybe not, or pen in this case, Microsoft Pen. Speaking of the pen, it's Microsoft N-Trig technology, and it's very good because Microsoft works on it a whole lot more than some other manufacturers. Like a lot of HP laptops, like the HP Spectre X360 family, they have N-Trig pens, but they do the bare minimum. It's not cutting-edge pen or digitizer that's available for N-Trig. This is pretty nice. It's not as nice as Wacom EMR for those of you who are really into tablet displays, and you know, like we saw in the Samsung Galaxy Flex, that sort of thing. And it's not as good as an iPad Pro pencil, to be sure, in terms of the smoothness of the lines, the pressure sensitivity being really, really good. But as N-Trig goes, this is pretty good. You can create good artwork on this. It is a bit more work. It's great for comic style illustration if you're a natural media artist where the nuances of the pen are important to you. Might not be your first choice, but it's pretty decent. I mean, I did create a nice painting on it. It took me more time maybe than it would have with something that is an iPad Pro or Wacom EMR based, but it's pretty good. For note-taking, it's fantastic, and it's a very manageable size. Other niceties include the usual stuff: a Windows Hello IR camera. You have a front 5-megapixel camera that can do 1080p video and an 8-megapixel rear camera that can do 1080p video, so better quality than you would see with most laptops, which these days, thanks to a lot of video conferencing, is important. We have Intel Wi-Fi 6, it's AX200, so that's good, not any of the weird Wi-Fi that Microsoft used to put in their products. The keyboard is the same old type cover. I'm not going to go into detail. I like type covers. I get along with them. This one is pretty small, so it depends on the size of your hands. It's backlit. It has a Microsoft Precision trackpad. It's pretty rigid. I mean, but there is some flex. If you type like boom, 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 you know, not so much. If you type like a pianist, thumbs up for that. One thing I do want to mention about the Alcantara keyboard covers is I don't know if the first run is a little bit defective or this is by design, but there is usually with Surface keyboards a magnet here and metal strip, and it usually latches on pretty well, so you can use it in propped up mode, except for no-go. But if you put it more upright, the surface itself, then the magnets do, not real strongly, but they do adhere. Now, this might really just be the byproduct of having really teeny bezels and it just needs more contact. I don't know what it is, but it's not a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind. Much like the last gen, Microsoft claims 10 hours of battery life on this, and yeah, if you're using the Pentium, probably if you're using the Core M3, you might get less. It also depends how hard you work the CPU. Remember, don't overtax this thing. If you have the CPU running at 50% or 100% utilization, that means shorter battery life too. But realistically, expect 7 to 8. While we're speaking of things that are small here, well, the display is pretty small too. For those of you who are over the age of 20 and remember netbooks, it's sort of like that experience. 10.5 inches. Sort of small. which can be okay with a tablet-centric operating system. But when you're talking about Windows, the default scaling they set it to is 150% now. Despite wearing glasses and being a woman of a certain age, I actually usually reduce the scaling or turn it off on most displays. I'm okay with teeny text and small icons, but even at 150%, I feel like this is a little hard to see. So those of you who are 40 and over, do keep that in mind. I mean, you can raise the scaling, but when you get up to something like 200% scaling, then windows start to run across the entire page, taking up more space than you would like. And yeah, but you do have that USB-C port. You can plug in an external monitor when you need more screen real estate, which is kind of cool for something this teeny. So really, in the end, with the Surface Go 2, you're looking at this versus the Surface Pro 6 or 7. Even the Surface Pro 5 still, which was a dual core, and you can still find a Core i5 with 8 gigs of RAM and a 128 gig SSD or 4 gigs of RAM with LTE for a not bad price, like around 500, maybe even 600 bucks as a competitor. The Surface Pro 6 is largely like Surface Pro 7. No LTE for either of those two, but if you need powerful windows or more powerful windows, and you don't need the tiniest possible thing, it's also worth considering those. And then there's Surface Pro X, which is pretty expensive and bigger at 13.3 inches. It's the most modern, but it's actually in some ways less versatile than the Surface Go 2 because it's running on an ARM CPU. So you get 32-bit emulation, which is slower than true running of Windows 32-bit apps, and no 64-bit still, and no driver compatibility. So your standard Windows drivers for your printer and all that might not work. So in a way, Surface Go 2 to me makes some more sense because at least you can run anything that was meant for Windows. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.